broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name's Sarah, and I'm the marketing manager here at Sagittarius, and we'll be hosting today's webinar, which we look at how data can be used to create contagious content with Ashley Ward from SEMrush. My details are on the screen, so please feel free to reach out and contact me after the webinar if you have any questions. I'm just going to run through some housekeeping for today's session. The webinar will last around 30 minutes and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So please feel free to type your questions into the webinar portal questions box and we'll answer them at the end of today's session. So just some information to anyone that's new to Sagittarius and doesn't know who we are. We've always been a marketing agency that focuses on results, and we work with brands to improve performance through digital marketing, which is about acquisition and retention, and e-commerce, which is websites that sell products, create leads, and drive inquiries. And here's a list of services that we offer, such as creative, digital strategy, data insights, UX, and CRO. Our product offering is made up of digital marketing services, and this accounts for around 40% of what we do. And this includes items such as PPC, SEO, and social and content strategy, but more on the strategy than the actually creating the content. We also offer design and build services, and that's the remaining 60% of what the agency's offering is, and work with a mobile-first approach with all of our digital developments and have a strong track record of award-winning user experience and optimization. Digital transformation is also at the heart of what we do, and this isn't just helping people with marketing, but helping brands rethink their value proposition with senior management teams. So, what are we going to learn in today's webinar? We're going to take a look at how data can be used to inform content creation decisions. We're going to reach a wider and more engaged audience, and why the user journey is important in creating experiences that convert. Now, as we all know, content plays a crucial role in the sales and conversion funnel, whether this is to inform a buyer about a product description or maybe to engage or inspire your target audience to book their next dream trip, hotel stay, or flight with your brand. We know that the path to purchase from start to finish is rarely linear, and it's more akin to a scavenger hunt. So today, in association with Ashley, we're going to look at how data can be used to create contagious content that is relevant, topical, and reaches a wider audience than it might usually, which is then used to influence and guide your prospects into the sales funnel. Ashley will discuss how we can use data to generate new topic ideas and create content for your chosen demographic, which they can engage with, looking specifically at the travel industry, and we'll be analysing a set of data based on search volumes. So I'm just going to hand over to Ashley. Bear with me a second. We can join today's webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. Can everyone see everything okay?
Yep, I believe so. Yeah, I can hear.
Perfect. Wonderful. So I will go ahead and get started. So I'm basically going to be sharing how you can actually create contagious content. So this is that viral content that we all hear about using data. So to get into it, when you know what you actually want to achieve, it's a whole lot easier to formulate what data you need and where to find it. So we first need to really define what our content goals are. What exactly do you want to achieve by creating content? I mean, just making content go viral isn't enough. So do you want to produce better content that's going to resonate with your audience? Do you want to discover stronger keywords that's going to help drive more traffic to your site? Possibly you want to work with more valuable or new types of influencers for your brand, or find new subject areas that are relevant to your audience. So doing some audience research thanks to your content. And there's also expanding into a new content marketing channel. Maybe you want to try podcasts and see if that works. And then there's always the lovely content metrics of generating new leads, getting more sales, exposure, the real ROI that comes from content. And you really need to define your content goals first before looking at the data, because different content is going to achieve different goals. So if you want to increase your website traffic, there's specific types of content that are actually going to help you achieve that goal a whole lot faster than, say, if you're trying to achieve customer education. So different content is going to help you get there faster, which is why it's so important to define what your goal is first and then start looking into the data and content types. So where does the data actually come in? I mean, we have our goals now. Where do the numbers come in? In 2017, last year, 85% of businesses made the decision to become predominantly data-driven, but only 37% of those companies actually reported success in their efforts. So what this tells us is everyone, just like you and me, know that, you know, we do need data and we do need to focus on data, especially when making business decisions, but we're struggling to do so. Clearly, we need some kind of clarity when it comes to all of the data that we use. So let's first look at our own data, the data that we have about ourselves, about our brand, about our business, about our content and our clients. So what that means is we need to audit our content. There's a ton of pros that come when you actually start auditing your content. Some of the top ones are you're going to learn what kind of topics work best for your audience. You're also going to learn what kind of content they like best. It may be those podcast episodes. It may be the different blog posts or videos. And then if it's blog posts, what kind is it? Is it how-to? Is it listicle? You're also going to learn from auditing your content who the author is. So there could be a specific author who's generating the most type of engaging content for you. It also could be how you're distributing the content, and then how long has the content been published before it actually started receiving any kind of data or metrics. So I created this spreadsheet, and pardon if it's a little blurred. This is a Google Excel that you can go through, and this is an example of a content audit using Google Excel. You can go in and go through all of 2018, go through all of your last year's content, add it into this spreadsheet and start tracking the metrics, see how your content is changing over time, and also get a better idea of what's happening to your content and the type of content that you're producing the most. So you can access this for free. Just go to bit.ly/content audit Excel, and then you can start using it for your teams. So there's some other tools that you could also use when you're trying to gather the data to fill this spreadsheet. Some different tools that are going to help give you the metrics that you need, such as your shares, your backlinks, what kind of social engagement you're getting from the content, what the title, meta, all of those details are. You can look inside of SEMrush and run a full content audit. You could also use Google Analytics and Google Search Console to find like the traffic metrics and the SEO metrics. And then you can use Majestic to help with your backlink metrics. And then you need to analyze what content is working best from this audit. So from running this audit, you're going to have a better idea of, okay, so clearly out of these 3 posts, why Twitter ads gave me the most Facebook likes, or 7 ways to increase your online sales gave me the most visits. So you're going to be able to actually measure a ton of data from just looking at your own content first. And once you figure out what's working the best, what kind of content is getting you the most visits or engagements or sales, whatever your goals are, you need to do a whole lot more of that. And then look at your competitors, because we can look at our competitors' data for content and get tons of ideas. So earlier in the year, SEMrush did a study using the different search volume tools inside of SEMrush to see in the UK, what the travel industry, what kind of search results have generated from the travel industry from June 2017 to May of this year. And so by doing something like this, you're going to be able to go in and see what is working most and what is working best for your competitors, and see what kind of search volumes they're getting, whether it's for their websites, their keywords. So you need to know who's leading in your industry for the most searched. You also need to know who's getting the most traffic. So if you just look at these two examples, Premier Inn is winning for the most searched, but then they drop down to second to last when it comes to who's getting the most traffic. Remember to analyze this with what metrics matters to you, and to take all of this as this is what your competitors are doing. This is what kind of traffic they're generating. How can you compare against this travel industry? And then you look at who's the most popular. So this is a low-cost airlines, who's the most popular based on search volume trends. And looking at the lowest cost airlines, Ryanair wins by far in terms of the most popularity by search volume trends. If you're in the travel industry, you need to be on this chart. You need to be high on this chart. And if you're not, you need to be able to look at data to become aware of the fact that you're not participating with your competitors in a search like this. And then you need to look at your industry data. So whether you have tons of clients in a variety of industries or you're in-house and you have one industry that you're focusing on, you have to pick apart the data that has to do with your own industry. So here we're looking at the search volume of keywords compared to how many people prefer to travel on their own versus buying tour packages. So we're just talking about the travel industry here. And just look at a search like that. People who are looking to travel on their own and how they can do it versus buying a whole tour package and doing things the easier way. That's just one of many subsections that have to do with the travel industry. But by looking at this and to see who's leading, what kind of search volume is coming in for something like this, whether they want to book a hotel, which clearly people prefer to book their own hotel versus booking a flight and booking a tour package. By knowing this kind of data, you can then create content that guides people on how to book a hotel versus spending so much time developing content on tour packages. Because maybe based on this data, that's not exactly what people in the UK are looking for the most. And so this is the search volume for tour packages, and it's important to know when spikes happen because clearly during the holiday season, people want to take the easy route. They don't have the time to put together a whole vacation package themselves, so they want to actually book tour packages. So this is a great 3-4 months here to actually capitalize on creating content that does have to do with tour packages. And then you can also look at data on, okay, what are we finding from search volumes online and from search data online? What are the most expensive cities to advertise in for the travel industry? And so by knowing what the most expensive cities are to advertise travel type of content and PPC in, this is going to help you better understand which ones to capitalize more on and which ones are going to take more of your budget. So lots of times clients will come and ask, okay, how much should I budget for a content campaign, or how much should I budget my PPC to promote my content? Well, you can pull up something like this by knowing who's leading in your own industry and say clearly, London is one of the most expensive cities to advertise in. So we're going to want to put most of our budget towards that because it's going to need most of our budget. So some tips when you're using data to actually create the content. This is before the content's created. This is in the creation process. You want to look at data patterns over time because data is going to change drastically from season to season, month to month, and even sometimes week to week. So this is the search volume for travel insurance searches during a 4-year period. Notice how a lot of the spikes start to happen between April, June, and August, and that's consistent over a 4-year period. So you can bet pretty comfortably that during these 2 to 3 months, every year, search volume for travel insurance is going to increase a lot. So that's when you're planning your content calendar, when you should be creating tons of content about travel insurance to publish during those time periods, so you can be more likely to show up when people are searching most for travel insurance. You also want to look at terminology that's used to generate new keyword terms and lingo. And that's because how users are searching is changing constantly. As users, we are getting more and more intelligent with how to search and how to get what we want and how to get it fast. So as content marketers and digital marketers, we need to be able to keep up with this. So as voice search happens and people are starting to talk to search versus type to search, they're using more casual lingo, more informal language. So are you putting informal language in your content, or are you still just putting SEO heavy friendly keywords in your content? You need to be able to do both. I mean, look at this example with travel insurance. These are all words that in the UK are attached when people are searching for travel insurance. You're looking at Nationwide, Barclays, Halifax, Exist, UK, cheap, direct, so probably direct flights, quotes, what the market is like, Tesco, Martin, Code, Bank, Europe, Go, Express. These are all trending words associated with travel insurance, which, as we saw here, is very, very popular, a seasonal keyword search term. So when you're looking to create content for travel insurance, make sure you're also including the proper lingo and keyword terms that users are actually saying. And here's the search volume for tour packages. Again, it's having different spikes. So analyze what data search for the most to generate new content topics and keywords. But with all of this data, you really do need to take it with a grain of salt, because sure, we can look at data and we can analyze data until we're blue in the face, but you still need to create human content. And I'll get to that a little bit more, but once we have the data, now what do we do with it? Well, ultimately, we all want to create viral content from it. That's the biggest goal, is if every piece of content we created became quote unquote viral, that contagious type of content that just took off. So how can we do that? Well, like I just said, the biggest way you can do it is to think like a human and not a bot. Yes, we need to satisfy search engines. Yes, we want to make sure we get on that page one. But in order to do that, we have to think of both the bots and the humans. And an example of this is an advertisement. I used to do a lot of Facebook ads, and ad copywriting for Facebook ads was one of my favorite things to do. I loved creating the content for Facebook ads. But when it came to this client, I really, really struggled in the ad copy. We narrowed down and A/B tested the image, found that this image was the best. Everyone really liked this. The headline was good to go. The subhead was perfect. All of that was performing great, but the ad copy we just couldn't get right. So I reached out to my friends over at Ad Zombies and said, you know, I'm just stuck on this client. And this client is a very, very luxury moving business in New York City. So they work with the richest of the rich who have very, very nice things to move. They have multiple houses. And I was explaining all of this to Ad Zombies, and they're like, okay, give us a couple days and we'll come back. So they came back to me with this ad copy. Remember the early days? We'd invite some friends, borrow or rent a truck, and for a couple of pizzas and some beer, the move was complete. Now, things are a little different. We've got a few more things to move, including the paintings you picked up at auction, the vase from China, and not to mention the Steinway piano played on stage at Carnegie Hall, blah, 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 goes into relevant rich terms. And this ad was genius. It was perfect. And it was the highest converted ad that we ever ran on Facebook. And what made it so good is it capitalized on the emotion of nostalgia. It brought people back, and it's saying that rags to riches story, because what this demographic can all relate to is they started from somewhere and now they're at the top. Now they are at the richest of rich. They are incredibly successful. They have great business stories, but they started back in the early days with moves being as simple as just inviting friends over for pizza and beer. Can you think of a way to actually engage emotion and nostalgia with the content that you produce and not just only focus on the data? And this is a fun little experiment where we look at different headlines and to go along with the human element to see which headline do you think actually got the most clicks. The first is "Don't Let Your Old Articles Die," or "The Blueprint Behind Republishing Content." Between these two blog posts, which headline do you think got clicked on the most? The blueprint behind republishing content got clicked a whole lot more than simply "Don't let your old articles die." And that's because the blueprint speaks to us as, oh, we can actually envision a real blueprint. Here's another one. "We've never given this away," or "Get our internal website optimization spreadsheet." Which do you think got the most clicks? The second one, "Get our internal website optimization spreadsheet." Is it sexy? No. Does it have a bunch of sparkly words? No. But it tells the user exactly what you're going to get when you click on this and what kind of content you can expect. You can expect a website optimization spreadsheet. And so when it comes to writing titles for our content, yes, we want to use data to understand the keywords to put into our titles. But here's a few things we want to avoid. Outbrain and HubSpot analyzed over 3 million paid headlines, over 10,000 publishers, and they learned that you don't want to include the viewer, using words like "best," because everybody's doing that, words that imply some kind of shortcut like "easy" or "trick," implying urgency like "now, you have to act now." Those don't work, but what does work is using numbers in your headline, reader addressing, doing how-tos, something that's normal, like ways to make drinking tea more delightful, the website optimization spreadsheet idea, and asking a question. You also want to go to where your audience is. So with SEMrush, we have an SEMrush All-Stars closed group. This is where we have a ton of SEMrush users, super fans, if you may, and leaders in the industry, where we can actually talk about important things that are going on and share content that's developed, as well as get ideas for the industry in this group. Can you create a group like that for your demographic to share your content? Because if you can, that's certainly going to help make it go viral. And you also want to recycle and republish your best content. This was an experiment that Buffer, a social media management platform, did, where they went a month without creating any new content. They recycled and republished 10 pieces of existing content and scheduled it to publish over the course of 10 weeks, or over the course of 4 weeks, excuse me. And as you can see, the very first one, the big list of Twitter tools, this was just an update to one of their popular tools posts. So they had a previous number, say 72, and now they added 91 free tools. The second was an update with the new audio version of the post. So it's really important to understand when you're going to reuse content, the difference between recycling and republishing. Republishing is going to publish the same piece of content, but you're just updating the info, the images, or some of the content. You're then going to redistribute that content on social media, maybe through an email newsletter, maybe through one of your Facebook groups. That's going through this very first one, the Twitter tools, where they added 20 more tools to an existing post. When you're recycling content, though, this is a bit different, and this is what we're seeing happen more and more. This is taking a content piece and reproducing the content into a new form of content. So this is taking that original blog post and now turning that blog post into an audio. So maybe doing a podcast episode with it, or taking the biggest highlights from the blog post and now making it an infographic or a case study. So you're not having to rewrite anything new or generate any new topics. You're taking what already existed, but changing the content form that it is in. And you also want to work with influencers to help promote your content. Influencers are really going to help make your content go viral by sharing it to their audience. The best ways to find influencers for your brand and for your clients is to track your brand mentions. See who's talking about your brand the most and reach out to them. If they're already talking about your brand, they're more than likely happy to keep talking about your brand. You also want to research industry blogs. You want to look at the top industry influencers and see if you can reach out to them, and check Twitter lists for any patterns on who's on a lot of the Twitter lists that are for your industry. And here are some tips when we reached out to the community to ask, okay, what really matters when it comes to making your content viral? Ross Simmons recommended working backwards. His comment was to look at what content is getting the most shares, upvotes, or comments. What specific topics and types of content are getting the most engagement? And how can you offer something new in those discussions? And then you had Catherine Aragon, who said you should really track trending topics. See what people are saying in the threads of trending articles, and instead of responding there, create a full-blown piece of content in the form of a response versus just a comment. And then you had Justin Champion, the principal inbound professor at HubSpot, who really likes the idea of comment marketing. So he recommends following threads on social media and then listening and responding to those conversations. In addition to generating new topics based on discussions that are happening there, it's also going to give you an opportunity to build thought leadership and form connections with members of your target audience by reaching them directly on social media. And then finally, you need to measure your trending efforts to see, oh, did anything go viral? Did the data that we use actually help us? Did we generate any new data? And it's really important. There's a lot of myths when it comes to which metrics really matter most, especially when it comes to blog posts or text-based type of content. So we went ahead and we demythed the top 3. The first that people used to always think was important was shares. If my blog post received a ton of shares, it did great, right? No. Just because a blog post was shared doesn't mean anyone actually read anything. And you could say, oh, well, they did because they spent a ton of time on my page. Well, not necessarily. They could have spent 5 minutes with your tab open, but they also could have head to the loo, went and got some tea, grabbed a glass of water, picked up a phone call, all while your content was still up. So sure, they shared it, maybe they clicked on it, but they didn't actually spend any time on it. And then you have page views. Even though we all know we're not supposed to, we are still writing clickbait headlines. Thankfully, we went over what to include in your headlines and what not, so you should have a better idea of what kind of headlines to write now for your content. But clickbait is skewing our page view metrics. So double check your page views with your bounce rate to see, just because you got a bunch of people who viewed your page doesn't mean they actually stuck on there. So in order to help combat that, we created the WOW score that actually, it's a little code that you can put onto your WordPress content, or if you don't use WordPress and have a developer, you can put this onto your blog post, and it gives you and your clients a better idea of how users are actually engaging with your content with this little code on the back end of your content. So what it does is it measures the user's active reading time based on how they're scrolling and how many words there are. So obviously, if there's an article that is extremely long, say 5,000 words, that's going to take a lot longer for a user to actually digest all of that. So what it does is it measures how they're scrolling. Are they scrolling fast and maybe just reading the headlines? If they are, then maybe your content wasn't good enough because it didn't actually stop them to read. So you're going to get a lower score. But if they're scrolling slower and actually digesting the content, you've clearly hit the mark and wrote content that your demographic actually wants to read. So that's where you're going to get a higher score. And so by being able to analyze this kind of data, you're going to get a better idea of what your demographic is actually engaging with and actually is taking the time to read and digest, instead of just getting the main highlights and running away from your page and perhaps going back to Google or back to Facebook where they originally came from to get to your article. So at the very top right, you'll notice the 97 score. You'll get a 0 out of 100 score. And clearly anything close to 0 is not so great. And the closer you can get to 100 means your audience loved it. So we need to create more content that gets us to that 100 score. If you have any questions, or if you would like these slides or any information on the tools or any of the tips that I covered, please feel free to reach out and email me. I'm more than happy to help. You can reach me at ashley.ward@semrush.com. You can always also tweet me at ashleymadhatter. And if you'd like a demo of SEMrush or more info, you can visit us at semrush.com.
Well, thank you, Ashley. That was really great. I'm just going to quickly head over to some questions now, and we're just going to look through some questions that we've received in this afternoon. So the first question that I have here is there a specific type of content that will go viral better than another type of content? Have you had any experience in that?
That's a really good question. And it's not necessarily that one type of content is going to make you go viral other than others, specifically because industries are so different. So for the travel industry, for example, Instagram type content, those images, those really beautiful travel images, the videos that are giving me a tour of the resort or showing me what the beach looks like or how great your seats are on the flight, that does really great, and that's going to go a lot more viral. But doing something like that for perhaps the insurance industry, that's not going to work as well. For the insurance industry, you need the more technical content. So that's going to be more of the case studies or the blog posts or the infographics. So there isn't a one-stop shop rule when it comes to this piece of content is guaranteed to go viral. You have to actually look at the data for your industry to see what kind of content is going viral the most.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, I think that's really helpful. And a question which has often crossed my mind is, how often should I republish my content? So that's kind of a question that I would have. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Certainly. You definitely don't want to republish all of your content all of the time.
Yeah.
A good rule of thumb is, if you're going to do a republishing experiment, start with 5 to 10 pieces of content for the last quarter to 6 months, depending upon how often you produce content, and republish those. You're looking at choose half of your best and half of your worst pieces of content out of those 5 to 10 pieces, and see, out of that, can I make my best content perform even better? And then the content that you have that perhaps didn't hit the mark, didn't really resonate with your audience, repurpose it into a different content type and see, maybe the topic was good, it was just the format that the content piece was in, and use that data to analyze, okay, I can make the content that I produced that wasn't so good actually perform well. I just need to reblanket it into a different content type.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I think they're really a couple of really helpful pointers to the questions we've had today. As Ashley said, if you have any questions that you didn't think of, or if there's a question that you might think about later on today, then please do get in touch with Ashley. I'll get in touch with myself at Sagittarius, and we'll be happy to help. The contact details are on the screen now, so please feel free to reach out if you have any. And unless I don't think I have any more questions from anybody today, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to Ashley for being our guest speaker for today. And we'll see you on a webinar soon. So thanks a lot, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.